like sitting on this table. Wonder if I should get a pillow. Hold on.
Go ahead.
Stand by. All right, much better.
Way better.
All right.
All right. Well, nobody's on yet, but I'm here. Hello, brothers and sisters. I'm with Trevor Haugen, and he, which is really interesting how I found about his stories. We've been friends on Facebook for a while. I was following your filmmaking stuff from way back in the day, all the way back to like Digital Juice, which is crazy. Yeah.
Right.
And I just kind of assumed that, you know, I was like, cool, he's Mormon when I added it on Facebook. And then I woke up myself personally in the last 8 to 9 months, which I know is very close to around your time frame of waking up from Mormonism. And then your whole life changes and everything is just, it's a rabbit hole and it just goes deeper and deeper. And I wanted to kind of explore some of that and then get into some questions and some comparisons and later on go into, you know, what happens after, which is really, really, really fun.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. So I was really interested in briefly about your family history, upbringing, growing up in Mormonism. Were you happy? Just a little bit about that.
Right. So I grew up in the typical Mormon family, and I was born into the Mormon religion. My parents were also born into the religion, and my grandparents were mostly converts to the church. But I think it actually goes back on my mom's side through one of her parents. I believe it goes back quite a ways, maybe 2 or 3 generations, even deeper. Yeah. So anyway, there's deep-rooted seeds of Mormonism, and I was just born assuming. I mean, right? You have a conditioned brain, and so you assume that's the correct worldview. That's the only worldview, right? And and everyone else will eventually learn the truth, right? So grew up in the church, very active, participated in all of the programs, was big into the scouting program as well, that they tie into the church a lot. And then I ended up at the age of 19 serving a full-time mission for the church for 2 years in Bolivia, from 19 to 21. That's kind of my upbringing. I don't know if you have any specific questions, but yeah, typical Mormon dude, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but it sounds like, I mean, I just recently learned that someone can deny or accept their mission. I didn't know that was a thing. It makes sense, but I just learned that, and it kind of brought a new perspective on Mormonism for someone who chooses to put themselves on a 2-year mission. I'm sure that someone who does that, especially a guy, would. I know in JWs, it seems like someone who goes on a missionary work seems like they're at a whole nother level of spirituality and hierarchy.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, it's very much expected. And so when you say they can say yes or no, I mean, that's true. But if you care at all about your social status, you're serving a mission, because to have all of your friends be going, all of your family members, like everybody you know, and then you decide to opt out, you're obviously kind of stepping out of the in crowd. And so that's kind of a hard thing to do. I mean, it's not like you get your call and then you decide whether you want to go or not. You decide to go, and then they issue you a call and you go wherever they tell you.
Gotcha. Okay. Right. That makes sense. The same as, okay, so similar to JWs. Right. If you're selected for Pioneer School or a certain thing, you're sent wherever they send you, or if you go to Bethel, the headquarters, same thing. But people can do own personal missionary stuff in the JW world. I'm not sure if.
No,
not at all.
No, not really. It's all sanctioned by the religion. Yeah,
they have their own process.
Yeah, it's a structure. It's a system that they have set up with mission presidents. It's a hierarchy that they have set up.
Okay, cool.
I mean, you could try. That would actually be kind of funny. If somebody's like, I am going to serve a mission, but I'm just going to do it my own way. I don't want to, I'm going to go around, pass out Book of Mormons, give people discussions. That would be pretty funny.
Yeah, it would be super funny. And then your 2 years, you said, in Bolivia, which was crazy. A little bit about that. I was very curious because I've never done a missionary or mission outside of the States. But you're only 19. Like, what was that like?
Right. Oh, wow. Yeah. Didn't speak the language. Kind of got thrown into it. So, you're paired up with a companion that you have to be with 24/7. You have to be with them 24/7. And my first companion was from Bolivia. He didn't speak any English. I didn't speak any Spanish. So it was a good way to learn a language, just get thrown into the fire. And, but, about, I would say 4 months or so into it, you start getting a little comfortable. Not only with the language, but I mean, also with what's being taught. I learned a lot in the Missionary Training Center, which you go to for, depending if you're going international or not, you'll either go 30 days or 60 days. That was how it was back in 2000. I'm not sure how it is now, but, and in there, I mean, you just learn, a lot of the doctrine and how to teach and all that kind of stuff. Back when I was a missionary, they had 6 discussions and they were all divided up into different themes and topics. But now they have Preach My Gospel, which is basically just the ideas and concepts in there. And then the missionaries are supposed to feel the Spirit guide them to whatever they should talk about. So that's kind of how it's laid out. But in Bolivia, they have what is called pensionistas. And those are that's like a family, like a member family that kind of takes you in, cooks for you. Some of them will even wash your clothes. In our case, like our garments too. And yeah, it's kind of funny, but yeah, but the whole thing's worked out for you. Your housing is all worked out. Everything's structured. You just show up. They tell you where to go. They give you, what to teach, and you're off. But for me, I really enjoyed it. It was a growing experience for me. I obviously picked up another language along the way. I mean, I can't complain. I had a great experience, so.
Awesome. Great experience. Now, growing up, the religions, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormonism, they're always constantly being compared because they are very, very similar, but they're also extremely, extremely different. And I'm learning the differences that they're like milestones apart.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you grow? I was just out of curiosity. Did you grow up with people like kind of comparing you guys to JDUBS? And I'm sure you had to, and then had to explain the differences.
No. I was never confronted with any other religion in my life. I knew I knew about Catholicism, and there were, like the evangelicals and Baptists, and I knew all of those existed, but I never talked to any of those people. I mean, why would I waste my time talking to them if I'm right?
That's true.
I mean,
unless you're
I don't have anything. I don't have anything to learn from them. So when they want to come to me for answers, then we can talk. I'm just telling you, that's the mindset, unfortunately, that happens. I think when you fall into a belief system, no matter what that belief system is, you shut your mind off. You actually disengage your intellect. And yes. And by doing that, not only do you not progress as a person, but we don't progress as a society. We don't progress, as a human race, when we can't even have open conversation with each other because we cling to certain ideas that we're convinced on. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's a perfect example of that. To be honest with you, I was a little arrogant in that. And I really didn't really know anybody either. And so the first time I was kind of faced with different religions and everything was in my mission. And that's when I ran into the JDUBs, as we say, walking around with their umbrellas, and they would knock our door, and we would have a conversation with them, and
that's crazy, and
try to figure out their Bible and things that they'd taken out of the Bible and why they had taken them out. And Revelations was pretty crazy.
Revelations is nuts.
Yeah, especially from a Mormon perspective, looking at it, read a couple of Watchtowers, trying to kind of understand it a little bit. You know some celebrities that are like Jehovah's Witnesses, and so it's like, whoa, Michael Jackson is, and he doesn't celebrate Christmas, and wait, they don't celebrate birthdays? Like, what? So it's funny because you can see the crazy in other religions, but you can't see the crazy in your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Because in my mindset growing up, I was like, oh, if they only knew what the Bible actually says, then they would understand. And let me try to explain it to them. And they'll be on the same page, and I would, feed them the misinformation I was given. So
and that's a bad strategy. Actually, it's a bad strategy. Like from a Mormon's perspective, if you're a Jehovah's Witness out there watching this, I would say the best strategy, because we don't, like, as Mormons, you can try to explain the Bible all day long, but it doesn't matter because we have the Book of Mormon, which is the most correct book on the face of the planet. So we kind of don't really. I mean, we believe in the Bible as far as it's translated correctly, but if you point out anything that's a flaw or anything like that, we just say, well, that's why we have the Book of Mormon. It's an easy out. You know what I'm saying? So
that's why you guys have actually have a copy.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, that's, yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
There's a lot there. And
this is massive.
Well, and we didn't change the Bible. It's the King James Version, but it's translated. There's the Joseph Smith translation at the back. And so we think that it's so crazy that you guys are changing the Bible.
Yeah.
But we're doing the same. It's just in a different book. We put it in a different book.
Yeah, it's right.
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah, my assumptions were kind of right. Is that LDS belief that they have the most up-to-date, hence Latter-day Saints, the most current information. I've been told before that, generally it's accepted that LDS believe that over time the Bible has just been corrupted and misinterpreted and represented. So that's why they have the most up-to-date and current, which puts all the faith in the Book of Mormon. And that's
and all the standard works from Joseph Smith. Because if he was a prophet talking to God himself, then the Doctrine and Covenants is probably more powerful than even some of the Book of Mormon, I would say. I mean, direct revelation from God. You know what I'm saying? So,
which is crazy to think about.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So real quick for the JW audience, who's new to this, I know that huge differences, holidays, birthdays, you guys still do those. Blood transfusions is a huge thing for us. I know you guys don't internally murder your own members like we do, like they do. And pretty much anything fun.
Oh, anything fun. Yeah.
Higher education is a huge no-no.
Really?
Oh, you didn't know that?
What do you mean? Like getting a master's degree?
Yeah, college is not encouraged at all. Oh,
really?
This is cool. Yeah, so it's
wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, so me at the age of 28 now, and another YouTuber that I collab with not too long, he's 29. Neither of us, with our status, because we wanted to go very high in the church, you cannot go to college.
That's unfortunate.
It's huge because that affects your financial well-being for the rest of your life. But of course, JWs don't do
financial well-being. But like I was saying before, it's a method that religion uses, right? Because to keep control over the membership, it is in their favor to stint the intellect, right? To kind of close yourself off to different ideas. Because as soon as you start thinking bigger, that's dangerous for religion. I could see that. The Mormon Church doesn't. Actually, the Mormon Church very much supports it. But they have a way, like if you go to Brigham Young University, they have a way of fitting evolution into their
really? I didn't
doctrine.
Know that.
Yeah. There's teachers that'll teach on evolution, even professors at BYU that believe in evolution.
Oh, wow.
And they're Mormon. But they have ways of explaining it in a doctrinal way. I mean, at the end of the day, they're dancing around a lot of things and closing off a lot of doors, and still able to kind of like allow it. So they're taking the stance of, instead of like, making them feel like, hey, don't look what's out there. Let's say that we are all for education, but let's make sure that we mold it in a very strategic way. You know what I mean? And so
put it through a massive funnel, like a massive filtered funnel. That's what I thought when I recently, in the last couple of years, found out that, you know, Mormons had BYU and they had their own colleges. That was genius. It's like, why don't JDUBs do this so that they don't have
genius.
Really dumb members like Scientologists who don't have education either? So
yes, why would they?
Like,
Mormons are smart. It is. It's genius because they know these people are going to have these questions. So why not go ahead and just answer them in according to our message and our doctrine?
Yeah, yeah. You know, you grew up. Just like me. I was born and raised in it. We didn't have a choice. If everyone's staring at a poster on the wall and it's gray and everyone's calling it purple, you're just going to agree it's purple.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, just like human beings, we know blue is blue because we were told it's blue.
Exactly.
If somebody came in and said, no, that's actually yellow, it's like, well, you're crazy. But it very well could be yellow. Who knows? These are just words. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, what I was going to say is one thing though at BYU is there's a certain type of standard they keep though, like a code of dress. So dress code, ethics, stuff like that. So you can't have a beard. You can't have a beard at BYU. You actually
didn't have beards until recently as well.
Oh, okay.
That's similar. I didn't know that.
I mean, there are Mormons that have beards. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, you know, when you're studying at the university, you can't. Like, you literally cannot even go in to take a test in the testing center if you have even like stubble, like a 5 o'clock shadow going on. And so, I don't know if it's that strict. It used to be that strict, but yeah, they frown upon that. And then, but also leadership positions in the church, they want you to look like a businessman. So clean shaven, short hair, business attire, just like Jesus.
Just like Jesus, exactly. Oh my God, I used to point that out when I was growing up because I was very brainwashed, but I was also every once in a while I'd get an epiphany. And they're like, yeah, no beards, clean shaven. If you're going to go to Bethel or be a pioneer, you can be clean shaven. And I was like, well, I'd be out in service doing the door knocking with a bunch of elders and other pioneers and missionaries. And I'd be, wait a minute, in all of our literature, Jesus has a beard, look. And then all the guys were like, well, you're right. I don't know. We'll just wait for the governing body to tell us what to think.
Yeah. And speaking of going around and knocking doors, isn't it funny that, and comparing it all to Christ, isn't it funny that Jesus Christ has it backwards? Like when we're ready, we can knock the door to him, right? Like, I don't think he spent a lot of time knocking doors. Like, I think people just came to him. He opened his mouth and people came, right?
Right.
And so I think anything that needs a sales force, any religion that needs a sales force, that might be a red flag. That's all I'm saying.
Huge red flag. Huge.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like if I go to a restaurant, you know, like I was in Italy and I was told, okay, if there's someone outside, like trying to get you in and selling you on the menu and telling you how great they are, then don't go eat at that place. Because they have hired that salesperson. You know what I mean? The places that are worth eating at don't need a salesperson. The best restaurants are the ones that are packed. They don't even have time to be out front trying to get people in. They're just waiting on people. Yeah. That's, I could see a parallel there.
That's huge. It's huge. And looking at it objectively now, that's out of it is like if Gordon Ramsay or Jamie Oliver opens up a restaurant, people are going to flock there because it has a good reputation. It's great food.
Right.
If you're begging people to come and be a part of your religion, it comes off extremely clingy and needy, and regular people, red flags are going to go off.
Yeah. We don't have too much problem with people knocking down the door at our chapels.
No, not at all. People are they're showing up left and right, or.
No, I'm just saying that it's all about trying to convince as many people to get into the chapel as possible. It's not like, oh my gosh, we just announced a new chapel. Like it's going to be crazy. Like get your tickets, you know, like get there 3 hours early and camp out, dude, because, you know, but anyway.
Yeah. Randomly, before we go down to this deep rabbit hole. This is awesome. This is actually kind of fun. I did in the last 6 months or so, I started searching, and I was very curious about visiting an LDS church. I've never been, I had some friends of friends that were ones, and they were always really nice. I actually went to one, and I just met this girl at my gym. We became friends. She was cool. She's like, oh, you should come to my, thing this Sunday for 3 hours. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And I was very curious. I wish I had recorded some of the stuff because I had asked them questions. Like I grilled them afterwards when things had happened. It was a new experience to be very friendly. It reminded me of like a Kingdom Hall, the JDUBs. Completely mind-blowing on some, seeing women up on podiums and giving talks in the beginning. That was news for me because women aren't allowed to do that in JDUBs. But then, they separated. There's 3 different meetings. A couple of red flags that went off immediately, and I called them out on it. I was dressed nice, so they just thought I was from another ward. So it was kind of incognito. Business attire and clean shaven.
Right.
And then afterwards, I asked a couple of questions. There was a few things that came out to me right away that I was like, that's really odd. But the rest of the experience was an enjoyable, happy experience. It's like, I get why people would want to be here. I totally get that. And if I had the choice of a cult to join, it would definitely be Mormonism, specifically for all the benefits that you guys have.
It's a great religion. It is a great religion.
I mean, you mentioned you grew up, you'd had a happy childhood. There's nothing really overly.
Oh, no, there's nothing like fundamentally wrong with it at all. Actually, there's a lot of positive you can get out of it.
Positive as in,
right? But yeah, no, I mean, there's always the however, right? But yeah. What I was going to say is, but it's a religion at the end of the day. I think it's a really great one though. Some of the things that I really enjoyed about it is the idea that that we had the capability of being gods, and that's a little different than Christianity, isn't it?
It's very different, and actually, I've heard of this as a rumor, but I've never confirmed this by asking.
Yes,
so please
it is confirmed. Yeah, or I should say Mormons believe. We both.
It's hard to say. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the LDS Church's doctrine teaches that the purpose of life is to progress and to learn how to become like Christ, aka God, so that we can one day reach exaltation, which is the highest glory in heaven. Celestial kingdom is what we call it.
Top
and there we
tier, right?
Yeah, it's a 3rd tier. Everything's in 3s except outer darkness, right? We don't count that. But anyway, and so when you're there, then you are able to take on godhood, and you will be the god of your own world. And so that, if you think about that starts getting a little crazy, because it would be a very, very infinitesimal probability that we are the very first world to ever exist with a god. And so if you get into that, it starts getting pretty deep, because okay, so well then who's our Heavenly Father's Heavenly Father?
Right.
Who's his God? Who's his God? His God, right? And if it's everlasting to everlasting, infinite, then that starts causing some I don't know.
It raises a lot of questions.
It does. I was gonna say, yeah, it causes some questions.
Wow.
And the typically the answer for that is we can't understand everything in this life, and we'll understand everything after.
Oh my God! So that's exactly the same. Whew. That's exactly the same.
And it's frustrating, because it's like, well, no, like, why, if we're able to ask these questions right now, and we're able to learn, and we're able to, like, why not ask these questions? And how awesome would it be if we can start our progression and our learning in this life? I think it's tragic when I hear that answer, just like, oh, well, kind of a crazy thought, but I guess we'll find out after this life. It's like, that is the, it's the most, like, to me, tragic thing that could happen to a human being, because in that moment, they're just accepting ignorance.
I'm very familiar with that. It's accepting ignorance. It's telling the brain to stop thinking, to trust someone else's supposed wisdom or research, and then
which is your own now, but it didn't come from you. Yeah.
No, it came from a bunch of dudes who did a lot of cover-ups in our case.
Yeah. I mean,
that's insane.
But every religion falls under that same umbrella.
Yeah.
Every religion does. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
any religion that claims that they are the gateway or the key holder or the messenger for you and God in that relationship is a huge red flag. So that's crazy. But I didn't know about the God thing at all in the worlds or how that works. But now I'm super curious.
But I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that teaching, because you know what it gave me? It gave me a bigger vision for who am I, like the divine inside of me is, there's godlyhood, there's godliness inside of me. And so I'm actually glad that I was born with that, because the further I trace it back, I mean, the more that makes sense. Not so much a dude in the sky kind of thing, right? But in the sense that that if there is something greater than us, then it's the same thing that connects all of us, right? And you can trace it back from a quantum physics standpoint and drive it down as deep as you can till you get past the atom. You go into quantum physics, and basically you get to the unified field, right? And everything that's from the unified field all the way through us and past into the universe is all one. It all is based on one code. It's all consistent. And then it goes from infinite to infinite. So if there is anything, it's all one, right? And so, I posted the other day and I just said, I may be a wave, but that doesn't mean I'm not part of the ocean, Mm-hmm. And so, so it kind of
it's a confidence booster.
It allowed me to accept that a little bit more, And I know Christianity is very much against that idea in the sense that there is one God. There's just one God, and everything else, and he reigns supreme, and everything else is underneath that. So when Mormons say they're Christian, they need to understand that there's that, because I mean, we do have a lot in common with Christians, but the doctrine doesn't follow 100%.
No, it's similar. Yeah. That rings a lot of bells with me, which is, that's crazy. So I was very curious about, I did want to ask this really recently. I found out someone very close to me that I work with is Mormon. He's actually going through a really tough time right now. I think he's going through a divorce. And I asked him about, it's major. His family's being torn apart.
That happens.
It happens. I've seen it. So my heart goes out to him.
Absolutely.
He did mention, though, because we started, that's why we had dinner together. We hung out because we realized, JDub, Mormon, kind of like this. I asked him about the shunning policy, which is huge with Jehovah's Witnesses. There's very harsh rules for if you are, if you're gay, or if you have sex before marriage, if you do all these, or even like small things, like smoking, you can be disfellowshipped. And then
really? Okay. Now, how does the repentance process work? How does the consequence from actions system work?
It's pretty harsh.
Confess sins to a local leader kind of situation, or? Yes,
exactly. Okay. So, thinking about Catholicism, it's very similar. They just call it different. So each congregation is run by a group of elders, group of older men, which I'm assuming is the same in Mormonism. No ladies allowed, just dudes. And
one of those ladies in there doing all the judging.
Yes. Bible says they're not good enough. That I would have very good relationships with some of them in the congregation, and my conscience would be bugging me because it's conditioned to think, certain things that I have done or someone else has done is bad. So I would tell on other people if I had to, because it was the right thing to do, or I would tell on myself because I was so guilt-ridden about X, Y, Z. The repentance process it's gotten better. It used to be extremely harsh with disfellowship, 1 to 2 years, no one talks to you, and then maybe you can get reinstated.
No one talks to you. Literally, they're public about it.
Yeah, they used to make an announcement in the 90s saying, you know, so-and-so is disfellowshipped for X, Y, Z reasons.
Whoa.
And they would announce it in the congregation, like public humiliation style. And some elders would go way overboard and, you know, put people in massive, serious depression. Some people would commit suicide from it because it was embarrassing. Nowadays, they say, you know, like Kameron is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and everyone goes, oh, in the crowd, it's huge, everyone cries, it's emotional. I've been through it, it's horrible. But also in my situation was also very liberating at the same time. I could have come back in about 6 to 12 months. In my case, I had fallen in love with what we deem a worldly girl. So the fact that I was going to move in with her, and I only told everyone like a week before I did it, was a pretty big deal and an extremely emotional wreck. But there basically was no hope for me unless I, you know, was going to meetings in the next city that I moved into. But the repentance process is like 6 to 12 months now. No one talks to you. Every once in a while, you get someone that'll like pat you on your back or your shoulder and be like, "Hey, I look forward to the day we can talk." But other than that, you're can't, and all your privileges are stripped. Your name is stripped. Everything.
Wow. So now we know who poisoned your mind. Can't trust the ladies.
It was a lady. Yeah.
Come in all sweet, and then they
like,
get shit. No.
Related to Eve, so I'm like, okay.
Right. No, exactly. It's the serpent. The serpent beguiled you. That's for sure. I'm kidding. No. I think that I mean, it's definitely not that harsh in the Mormon religion, but if you are disfellowshipped, then there's certain activities you can't take part in, and it's very obvious, and so in that way it's very embarrassing, and so sometimes it's like, oh, it'd be better just to not go to church. I don't want to have to deal with the humiliation. So every time they ask me if I can pray or read a scripture, take the sacrament, whatever, like I can sit there, but I can't participate. So it's like,
it's extremely embarrassing.
Let me just go get beat up for a few hours. And I went through that for a year. And then I came back out of that. And then I served in some leadership positions. I was in my branch presidency and really trying to get back in it, you know. But that was a hard process. You got to like prove yourself again, you know. You got to prove yourself. And it's typically a year, you know. Mm-hmm. But then there's excommunication. If you do certain things, you know, certain sins hold like a greater weight. And so, you know, if you commit adultery, you know, something like that, murder, some of the bigger sins.
Murder part.
Then you're what is called excommunicated. And the only way to get back into the church from there is to be baptized. So your name and records are wiped. You're no longer a member of the church. And we call it X'd. Yep.
X'd.
Yep.
So-and-so got X'd.
Yep. So-and-so got X'd, dude. It's a big deal.
People can still talk to them, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Whether they want to or not is a different thing. Because if you're X'd for something, you know, it's kind of like, you know, you don't want to talk to that person because you don't want it to rub off, you know, or something. If somebody leaves the church intentionally, especially if they get X'd because they're speaking against the church, you don't want to talk to them. And internally, like within the culture, yes, it's very much like, be careful with this person. Like it's a trouble person, you know, kind of like in Scientology a little bit. There's some parallels there. You know, what do they call it? A
suppressive person, or getting disconnected. Yeah.
It's an SP.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would probably be considered an SP.
Yeah, me too. Would join the club. Yeah. It's not like when I started the YouTube channel and I started doing all this stuff, it's not like, yeah, I want to be an apostate. It's just, I still don't consider myself an apostate.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
It's just the label they give
us.
What
a hard word they give it, right? On purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you Google the meaning of apostate, it has nothing to do with what they actually they term it and deem it to be. It's crazy, but
it's interchangeable with with ignorant. Ignorant would be a word. Easily led would be a word. Lazy, maybe another word. You know, into the world. Those are all synonyms, I think, for apostate that culturally are given. Is that pretty similar?
Yeah, I Googled it not too long ago, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's it's like just being a sheep. Sheeple.
Sheeple.
Yeah, I was just curious because my friend, he was swearing up and down that, you know, the Mormons don't shun like JWs, and it sounds like most of that is pretty true. But there might be, I'm sure, gossip gets around about whatever someone did, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that choose not to speak to.
Yeah, it's not in the teachings of the church or the manuals or anything like that. It's not done from an ecclesiastical way, but culturally, it's present.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Culturally, it's present.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah,
that's the best way I can put it.
Yeah, it's just in the culture.
Yeah. You are looked at different. Absolutely.
Oh, I'm sure.
People see it as unfortunate. Yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh, what I want to tell them is like, I would like you could pay me $1 million and I would not take the last year of my life back. The amount of knowledge, progress, happiness, everything that I've learned in the past year, like that has zero value on it. And I think a lot of times, I mean, you can be like religious and be spiritual. I mean, you can be, but if you're truly spiritual, you don't need religion.
I myself am and have come to that point, even though I don't know why I torture myself. I still go to different churches every once in a while just to see, and I get there and I'm like, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah.
All these red flags go off, and I'm like, it's just another cult.
Right.
I'm very, very curious. I want to talk about your wake up story because that's huge to me. As soon as I found out that you had woken up around the same time that I did, I was like, number one, I have to speak to this guy. This is amazing. But I find that I don't know about you, but is it more rare for a Mormon to wake up? Is that it's not a very common thing?
It's becoming more common with the internet. You know, now that information can be shared a lot easier, it's harder to whitewash stuff. It's harder to hide from facts. It's becoming more and more like prevalent, I would say. I think a lot, you know, if you look at the statistics, I think a lot of people are leaving now versus 15, 20 years from now, or 15, 20 years ago. So, anyway, but it's still like, it's still weird. It's still very much weird to leave. And so it takes a lot. It takes a lot to like you said, wake up from it.
It's like the Matrix, like literally like the Matrix.
Yeah, and you're literally you literally get to a point, you get to a fork in the road where you can decide whether you want to take the red pill or the blue pill. And most people I know, they get to that fork, they decide to take the blue pill just because it's more comfortable. You know, I think, or they think the red pill is the devil instead of God. Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny. Yeah. But I mean, that's how we're conditioned. And every time it's talked about in a religious standpoint, from what I see in all religions, is that red pill is the devil, you know? And that's a huge differentiating factor between spirituality and religion. You know, that spirituality is that red pill.
It is, yeah. Opening your mind to
yeah, I mean, you can be spiritual, you can be a spiritual person, but if you truly want to unlock it, you know, I think that red pill is necessary. But it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody, you know.
No, yeah, and it definitely depends on what stage the person is in their waking up process, or if they get to that point, who intervenes. Yeah,
and if they ever get to that point in this life.
Which is really scary to think about.
And maybe that's the whole samsara thing that Buddhism talks about, you know, or Hinduism, you know, reincarnation, about the fact that you will get it, like you will figure out what Jesus was really saying eventually, But if it takes several lives to get it, then that's what it takes to break that, you know. But when you wake up from it and you can learn how to transcend that, then you, I think, well, and what I'm experiencing anyway, through meditation, namely transcendental meditation, is that it's possible to transcend the mind, your thoughts, and tap into that pure consciousness. And when you know that that exists, there's an observer of thoughts, you know, the natural self, whatever you want to call it. Then you can be more self-aware. You can look at the values that you really have, and you can determine what processes and actions you want to use in order to gain resources that are in alignment with your values. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, I think that it's hard to get there when you believe you are the ego. And unfortunately, that's kind of, religion plays into that, you know, that you are special, that you are, you know.
Because we're right, because we've already done the research, because this is, you know, there's no way we could be wrong.
Yeah, there's no possible way, because it's how you feel, you know what I mean? How do you explain feeling the spirit when you don't have faith? Because I'm a man of no faith. I have no religion. I try not to cling to beliefs. I have a very open mind, and I'm actually creating a YouTube channel, which I'm really excited about. It's called Beyond Transmission. And literally I just talk about different ideas. We're going to talk about what is Buddhism, what is Taoism, what is the simulation hypothesis? You know, are we a simulation? You know, I mean, to just explore everything, you know, because in a universe as complex as the one we live in, the craziest ideas are worth exploring, man. And if we shut ourselves off and prejudge any concept or idea, then we're doing ourselves a disservice, man. Sorry, that was kind of a rabbit hole, but.
No, that's good. When do you plan on coming out with this YouTube channel?
So I'm going to be rolling it out in the fall, and you know, I do a lot of travel. I've been very fortunate to travel doing video production work and film, and so I'll be visiting something like, I think 10 or maybe a dozen different countries over the next 6 months. And so in all of those countries, there are going to be different transmissions. So I'm going to say, hey guys, you know, there's a transmission from Vietnam. Show a little of the footage of, you know, because I'm out there filming. So show a little footage of Vietnam, which I'll be in 10 days. Show some of the beautiful people and the landscape, and then just share an idea. Like, let's talk about who am I, you know, from different perspectives, you know. And my whole goal is to open up communication between people like you and I. Like, you and I are able to have an amazing conversation, and we know that we could talk all night. We could probably talk for a week straight on ideas because of that, because we've been able to kind of get past the cling, you know what I'm saying? And we can open our minds to so many different ideas. And isn't it fun? Isn't it exciting? Like, to me, it's like I'm reborn, man.
It is. It's a new perspective. I don't know about you, but I feel like even though I'm 28, I feel like I'm 18 when it comes to so many different concepts of the world, so many different ideas and philosophies and things that we get to do and experience. It's like being a kid again.
Yeah. And so anyway, I think I'll probably be rolling it out sometime in the fall, but it will be called Beyond Transmission.
Beyond Transmission.
So It should be fun, man.
When that comes out, I will definitely mention it and shoot out a shout out to my viewers and the communities that this is going out to. We've got, oh gosh, there's some groups that we're part of. We've got like 10 to 12,000 members per group, and it's crazy. So we'd love to.
Well, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, my only agenda of the whole thing is so that we can start to understand each other, so we can live more peacefully. You know, we can communicate in a way that is, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, that helps bring bliss in this life and acceptance. You know what I mean? So, I mean, that's my only agenda, really.
That's awesome. We need more of that.
Yeah.
We need so much more of that in this world.
And it doesn't happen with closed minds.
No, not at all. Definitely not. That's where intolerance kicks in, and
Yeah. Yep.
all the problems from there. I was very curious to briefly touch on how you woke up, because
Okay,
that's huge.
So how I woke up was so I have to trace it back as far as I can. I think I would have to say that all of my travel was a huge part of my waking up, because in the past 7 years, you know, I've traveled a lot. I've been to like 40 countries, and I've met a lot of different people with a lot of different beliefs, and a lot of different ways of going about things, you know, different concepts. And so that started opening my eyes to really what is out there. And I also saw conviction in people. I saw conviction actually surrounding ideas that I had never even heard of or thought about before. Then when I got home, I just felt like I was climbing back into my box, you know, and shutting myself off from all of that, especially as I was part of the religion, you know, and the social, like the culture that I am involved in, you know. You don't really have conversations outside of, you know, the religion when it comes to philosophy and spirituality. You just kind of don't. Maybe with like a best friend, you're like, whoa, dude, look at the universe, you know, like it's like, huh, we'll figure it out one day. Like, you just don't let yourself go into deep conversations. But anyway, I started allowing myself to
interrupt for a second. You were in the heart of Utah too.
Yeah, I am. So I'm in the heart of Utah. I'm in South Jordan, Utah, Salt Lake Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so that explains a lot. You were in the culture. You don't question that stuff growing up, but you're very lucky to have this travel to be able to take glimpses that a lot of other people might not have that opportunity.
Right. Yeah, and it makes sense to be Mormon here, because great business opportunities. If you're Mormon, you can be trusted. In school, you'll get all the coolest friends because everyone's Mormon. You know, so the motives to be Mormon are pretty big. But anyway, I think that's what it was, is I just finally started opening my mind to different possibilities, realizing how limited my belief system really was. And I started seeing that it was actually very tragic to see people when I would come home after being somewhere and talking to some very like intellectual people, or, you know, philosophy and different religions and stuff. It was very like sad to me to like talk to people and not be able to engage in those kind of conversations, because, you know, this is the end all. Anytime that a certain idea is the end all, like, it's kind of dangerous. And so anyway, yeah, I just, that's when well, the church came out with some policies that turned into doctrine, surrounding the LGBT community that I wasn't too excited about. And that to me was kind of like, okay, I started looking at it differently. Like, do my values align with the church's values? You know? And then I shot a film last spring, and it was centered around Buddhism in Thailand and Myanmar. And that was just another thing, you know. I was taught kind of different rituals and meditation and stuff out there, which was awesome. And then there, one day, I think it was in June or July of last year, so almost like 1 year ago, I heard about this thing called the CES letter, which was a letter written by a member of the church to the CES director, which is Church Educational System, with just a whole thing of questions and concerns about church history, doctrine, all that kind of stuff. And anyway, this letter, he put it out into Reddit just to kind of get feedback from people like, hey, does everybody else have these same concerns, or is it just me, kind of thing? Like, am I missing something? You know, I don't want to send this with things that aren't right, you know? And so, but what happened is through the Reddit threads, it kind of went viral. And so from there, it was just shared, and they created a site around it, cesletter.com or .org. And Jeremy Runnels is the guy that wrote it. Brilliant guy. And
It was I didn't realize that he
Yeah.
was deaf either. That was
He's,
like
yeah, he's
incredible.
deaf. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, and so I heard about that CES letter like 3 different times in one day. And me and my wife were like, holy crap, like, what is that? And my wife kind of like, she wasn't really wanting to read it, but I was really interested in reading it. And we heard from somebody that if you're a couple and one of you is going to read it, it's important that you read it together, which I'm so glad we did, because from there we went through the process together. We finally just went through it, triple, quadruple checked everything to make sure we were looking at all the correct information. And it was the intellectual stuff, okay, the letter, mixed with the spiritual that I had felt. It was both of those that basically they just started conflicting so much with my values that it literally kicked me out. Like I couldn't participate anymore.
How long was that period of going through it together with you and
that was probably, I would say, 4 to 6 months or so.
Oh wow. Okay.
But I woke up to that. But I think there was a second awakening that happened maybe just a few months ago, and that was an awakening. It was a spiritual awakening, that I had. And so I kind of like, I had an awakening to what was not true, and then I had a second awakening to, kind of what I think's closer to what's really going on. Mm-hmm. As best as I can see, but I'm always open to additional information, you know what I mean? But I have kind of my idea of what would be going on, Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm excited to talk about that a little bit too, because that's huge. A lot of people, where you and I are still fresh in waking up, the early stages.
Right.
With these questions come up, and I have these conversations with a lot of other, ex-JDUBs, or I don't know any ex-Scientologists, but I would love to know them.
Right.
There's many other churches that are very similar. You get to that point, you're like, what is real? What is really going on? Mm-hmm. What is God? What is all these questions, which I definitely want to get into for sure.
Right.
And the CS letter, that was interesting in one of your interviews with John, that you guys are talking about. There's the history of, Joseph Smith, polygamy, Book of Abraham. There's no archaeological evidence. And briefly, do you want to touch on that?
Sure. It's hard. It's kind of hard to talk about, because
so much.
Because it's so just anyway. When I was going through my transition, it's all I wanted to talk about, and I know that there are a lot of people that are still going through that, whether it's in Mormonism or Jehovah's Witness or any religion, and so I guess it's worth sharing, but yeah, I mean, I had my top 10 kind of reasons, or my top 5 reasons, really, when it came down to it, that were just like pretty much irrefutable and major deal breakers for me. And even though it went deeper than that, it was like logical stuff. Yeah, like first of all, how we read the Spirit. Okay, so how we are, how the Holy Ghost confirms the truth. Because I'm sure that you, or at least several people in your congregation, would say that God himself, through the Spirit, the Holy Ghost, confirmed to them that this is the right path. Jehovah's Witness is the most direct pathway to God. Mm-hmm. So how am I, as a Mormon, going to tell you that you're wrong and I'm right? How can we compare feelings? I can't step into your body, right? And you can't step into mine. So that system of the Holy Ghost confirming a religion is flawed. You can't. I'm just saying you can't put all of your eggs in that basket. It's good to feel good, right? And I think a lot of time when you feel the Spirit, it's based on truth. I really do. But I don't think that it's confirming that it's the only truth.
No, yeah, I agree.
You know what I'm saying?
Definitely, because I had those feelings too many times growing up. It's like, who am I to say, that this Buddhist is wrong, or this, this hippie guy, or, this Muslim, maybe they have bits of truth. And then some of the stories I'd hear growing up, people saying, I felt the Holy Spirit, or I felt God working in mysterious ways. The stories are just crazy, like, they're insane.
Yeah. Or talk to a radical jihadist. I don't know of anybody that believes more in the cause than them. I mean, willing to strap a bomb and, for the cause and for their God, so if we think we're feeling something strong. Anyway, so that was my first one. I mean, I'll just kind of share the rest real quick, but the Book of Mormon just doesn't add up from a logical standpoint. I mean, there were these gold plates that no longer exist. We can't test, right? But so the only thing we can look at is archaeological data. We can look at science. We can look at DNA analysis. We can look at geography. We can look at all of that. And when everything goes against what the actual document says, which is literal, it's not a spiritual work. It's a literal work. I mean, it is a spiritual work, but according to the Latter-day Saints, it was very much written by real people. You know what I'm saying? So these are real prophets that supposedly lived. And so, when there's zero archaeological evidence to not only support it, but actually go against it, like a lot of things that are in the Book of Mormon didn't even exist during that time, from 600 years, 600 BC to 300 AD. Like, it's just, you can't find that stuff. It just didn't exist. So there is a lot of that going on. I also have a very extremely hard time with the Book of Abraham and really the entire Pearl of Great Price, but the Book of Abraham with its diagrams in there that were translated from Joseph Smith before we could translate Egyptian, and now that we can translate Egyptian, it's all just hokey. Like, it has nothing to do with what these drawings are actually saying. So that's a red flag right there. A lot of what is written in the Pearl of Great Price and what is written in the Book of Mormon is taken directly from the 1769 version, the King James Bible, the exact version that he would have had. It was not around in 600 BC. So yeah. So it's there are a lot of things. I don't know how much you know about our polygamist history of polygamy.
I know a little bit. I know that from brief research that I've done is that and the ward that I went to, because I asked them up and down about that question, they did not have an answer for me. I even asked one of the girls, the girl who invited me, I was like, are you okay with me, like, polygamy is a thing. Like, one of the guys your friends explained is that we stopped doing it because of legal reasons, but otherwise we'd be still doing it, which bothered me right away, because more than one lady that's enough headache in the first place. But more than one dude would be enough. Yeah, it's both ways. But for her, I looked her in the face and I said, you would be okay with, like, me having another 14 wives? And I looked at her and I said, do every other Tuesday work good for you? And she started laughing, and she's like, I know it's kind of crazy, but if it was for the betterment of humankind and we needed to, have more, the way she explained it was that to be fruitful and have become many, then that would make sense. And I said, but your face is not saying what your words are saying. You look really uncomfortable. And then I guess Joseph Smith was doing some crazy stuff.
That's how I would answer it in my mission. I would just say, well, during that time, we were being persecuted because we had the truth and people weren't willing to accept it, and it sounded crazy, and so people drove us out, those poor saints, and so we had to multiply and replenish real quick when because making a trek so that we could have freedom to worship, it cost a lot of life. And so when we actually got to the Salt Lake Valley, Brigham Young, that's when it was very prevalent. Before that, Joseph Smith was practicing it, but in secret. And that
It was
was
in
one
secret.
thing. It was in secret. That was one thing that got me. I didn't know, actually, when I was serving a mission. Maybe today they do, because they're starting to be a little more transparent with things, because they kind of have to be.
Right.
Because people can find the stuff out now.
People can Google.
But yeah, but I didn't know that. But what really got me was the polyandry. That didn't make sense to me. Like, how do you explain that one? You know, polyandry is where you marry another man's wife. And Joseph Smith was marrying not just any, like, you know, man's wife, but men that were within the church. Like, they were members. They had the priesthood. And he would send them on missions and marry their wife, and I mean, all sorts of stuff. And so
he would do it, King David. He would send them away on their mission and then marry their wife behind their back.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And he would do a lot of it in secret. And, you know, and so I was like, why didn't I know about this stuff? You know? And so for them to admit that it did happen.
The church admitted publicly.
Of course. Well, to me, and, you know, I've talked to general authorities of the church, high up, you know, general authorities of the church, church historians, and they admit to it. But
I think in your
why didn't I know that?
Too,
you know,
Elder Don and Clark.
Don Clark and
Matthew J. I'm not sure what his last name is.
Matthew Grow. Yep, Matthew Grow. And you know, I recorded my conversation mainly just because I felt like I wanted to have it in case any family or friends, you know, really wanted to know what the church's stance was on these things, and that they are admitting to these things, and that I'm not crazy and all that kind of stuff. It was more for, you know, I don't know. I mean, looking back, I shouldn't have shared it the way that I did. But, you know, when you're on the other side, you just got to realize that you believe just as strongly against it than the people that, you know, actually believe in it. And so I guess it's my missionary nature to want to share truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I made it very unbiased. I didn't do any commentary or anything. I'd shared it. And so people could see the conversation that we had. Again, it comes down to opening our minds to conversation, being like allowing ourselves to have these hard conversations. It takes a lot of guts to do that, you know? But when you do it, you kind of get shamed a little bit for it, you know? And so it's hard. It's really hard. And people are like, oh my gosh, you know, they'll look at everything wrong about it instead of just opening their mind to it, or, hey, let's have a conversation about it. Or, you know what I mean? It's very secretive and protected, you know? And so yeah, but my other things were prophets that don't prophesy, and witnesses that didn't witness anything.
Those are huge. And actually, I'm very unfamiliar with those last two. Very
yeah. So there's 3 main witnesses, and then another 8 witnesses. So there's 11 witnesses total. And, you know, the 3 witnesses basically all came forth and said, we never touched or saw physically the plates. I mean, we saw them in a vision. And that to me is kind of a big difference. You know, I wouldn't consider a witness being somebody that dreamt up that I was doing something. I would think that person would physically need to be there, like when I'm signing or doing whatever, like, you know,
the eye out of it. The eyewitness part of it.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's mind blowing.
And then I haven't seen any prophecy since Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith was very ballsy. He was very, like, I believe he was extremely intelligent, and possibly even enlightened in a lot of ways, like inspired in a lot of ways. But I just don't think that religion is ever the answer, you know? And so, but since Joseph Smith, I haven't seen any prophets really prophesy. It's more kind of a rerun, you know?
Rerunning of what they past said, and then trying to.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we have we have books of, like, okay, the life of Heber J. Grant, Brigham Young, you know, David O. McKay, and all of the prophets, and we can learn about their life, and they, you know, and they teach and all that kind of stuff, which is great. but the topics are all, it's all the same. It's all repeat. So it's not new information. We're not progressing. We're not answering these big questions. We're just going back to faith, prayer, repentance, you know, and gift of the Holy Ghost. I mean, all that kind of stuff. And that stuff answers all the questions, because if you ever want to know something, just pray about it, you know. Don't so much look into it or engage the intellect, but just go off of your feelings, you know.
Yeah, they put the blame back on the members. It's like, well, you should do some more research. You should do some more prayer, be more repentant, delve into the literature that's already there. The answers are in there, but it's not answering the question that's being.
And I mean, it's all good and like happy, like, but it just gets to the point where it's just like, okay, I'm ready to go beyond this, you know. Yeah,
you're ready for the intelligent conversations in an open, friendly way, if possible.
It's like they say milk before the meat, but it's like, well, where's the meat? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Wow, which is huge. Randomly, really quickly, I'm sure you've seen, hopefully you've seen the South Park episode.
Yeah, of course.
Mormonism.
Yeah.
What did you think about it? Did you like it?
I watched it with I had for a brief stint an atheist girlfriend, okay? And she showed it to me. And
me too.
Are you serious? Oh, that's funny.
For a little bit. That was funny.
Yeah, wow. That's a funny thing to have in common. But anyway, and I just laughed it off. But at the end, it says something very important. It says, the little Mormon boy, he says, you know what? I don't really even care if it's not true. I just know that I'm happy in it. And that's all that matters to me. That to me is actually something I didn't like. Now I don't really like. I mean, there's truth to that, right? Like we were talking about, people, you know, ignorance is bliss. And so a lot of people will choose that and just be like, well, I don't really care about truth. I'm just happy in it, you know? And so that's all that matters to me. But the issue that I have with that is that, can you honestly say that, I mean, that what we can like come up with in our puny brains as, you know, what happiness is and what an afterlife is and all that kind of stuff, like if we shut ourselves off and just the first thing that's happy and exciting, we like latch onto that, like, oh, that sounds good, right? How do we not know that like it's actually even better than that? You know, like the happiness is more than what, you know, than what you guys are saying. Like the bliss, like it can be experienced in this life. Like you don't have to wait to die, you know? And it's what I believe Christ was pointing at, Buddha was pointing at, and every enlightened person in history points to, you know? And they don't have a perfect understanding, but they point to it. And the problem is, it's like, you know, instead of people looking at what they're pointing at, they just look at that person. They begin to worship that person, create a religion around that idea, you know? I don't know. I go off on a lot of detours. I totally even forgot what question that was, but.
So did I, because it was so interesting.
Was that interesting enough?
No, definitely. That's actually it. Next, I want to briefly touch up on, because this is a red flag for me when I went to the LDS ward, when I was sitting in the last meeting where they divide the genders, male for female.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you have your own classes at the very end, yeah.
I was in one of those classes and I was dressed nice. I think only the kid next to me knew that I was first timer.
Oh,
I just thought I was from a different ward. The guy behind me goes, I said, oh yeah, a lot of people in the world, they like to focus on, you know, how we don't let black people in the higher ranks of the church. And he said something about women as well. And my neck just about like snapped in half when I looked back at him. And I was like, what? What? And even my roommate, he's like, I would never ever become a Mormon. He's, you know, he's black. He's like, I would never become a Mormon because I would never be able to get anywhere. And he said he felt sorry for any of the guys that did fall for that crap. But
well, and I got to say that's not true anymore. They changed that in 1978.
Oh, they changed it. Okay,
so they changed it. But the fact that it was a thing for the majority of the history of the church, right? If you really look into things, these prophecies, kind of like when they stopped polygamy as well, they're more for political reasons or cultural reasons, right? As soon as it's no longer politically accepted or culturally accepted, instead of hanging on to that doctrine because it was, I mean, it was doctrine from God, they change. And the God that I know doesn't change. But religion can change. And it has to change because it actually relies a lot on the government. The government relies on religion. And so they need to coincide. So as soon as we couldn't have statehood unless we stopped, practicing polygamy, it was like, oh, guess what? We just got a revelation. We don't do polygamy anymore. Even though most of the leaders, I shouldn't say most, some of the leaders high up still practice it secretly until it kind of faded away. Even today we practice polygamy, but just in a spiritual sense. I was married before in the temple to my first wife. I got a divorce. I remarried now, and I got remarried in the temple about 6 years ago. And I'm sealed to both women. And so a woman can't get sealed to multiple men, but yeah, and they can't.
You see my face right now, like, huh?
yeah, we can't get a temple sealing divorce. That can't be broken unless she goes and gets sealed to another man, because no woman can enter into the highest kingdom or the highest glory of the celestial kingdom without the priesthood, without being tied to a man. And so that's why that happens. And there are apostles in the church that are practicing polygamy in a spiritual way like that. They're sealed to several women.
That's mind-boggling. So it's not necessarily a common physical thing, but spiritually.
Yeah, they don't live with them. Yeah, but in a spiritual sense, it's like if we all were to die today, whoever you're sealed to, you're going to be sealed to in heaven. And when you have a problem with that, you know what they say? Oh, well, a lot of that stuff we can't really understand now, so we'll figure that out in the next life.
I'm familiar with that.
Right? Sounds familiar.
Super familiar. It's like
it's just those answers don't
fly.
Go very far. Yeah, they don't fly after a while.
You tell that to a judge,
Yeah, exactly. Who's to know who killed her? I guess we'll find out after this life. O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
He should have just used that line, and it would have been a shorter sentence. I mean, a shorter court hearing. But dude, yeah. So it's crazy.
I mean, this stuff should be researched. It should be true, especially if someone is going to devote their life, the child's life, their time, family, money, tithing. In JW's case, they vowed usually a vow of poverty to continue in the religion. To go higher up you go. I know that.
Wow.
That's everyone in the headquarters has to sign a document that they won't make any money.
What?
Yeah.
Do they though? Do you know?
Yeah. They're actually like legit about that. All the money that goes back into the religion.
Wow. It's very much kind of opposite that in our church. So our clergy is not paid up until the higher ranks. When you get into the higher ranks, you get a salary. So the apostles and the prophet, they have pretty big salaries. They're over 6 figures.
Wow. Okay, so I did have a question about that.
They don't share the financials of the church. Yeah, but I mean, there's pay stubs that have leaked, from the apostles, and a lot of people that were in the financial department have been leaving and sharing information. And so, I mean, it's all kind of, but
it's leaking now. Yeah, that's crazy.
But yeah, so kind of crazy. Yeah.
Wow. I do know that like the governing body, the 8 dudes that run the Jehovah's Witness religion in New York, they may not receive a pension or salary, but they do get a lot of gifts because they're treated like gods.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So a lot of their interviews, they're like wearing 18 karat gold Apple watches and just completely pimped out in all their stuff. And
those are the blessings from God when you do His work.
Exactly. God doesn't need your money, but we do.
But anyway,
I definitely want to jump into like post spirituality. This is huge.
Okay. I
know you're very passionate about it. I'm passionate about it. I think you're a little bit further along than I am. I would love to hear your thoughts and what you found, where you're at right now.
Right. Well, first of all, I mean, life is, the thing is, if I were to tell you what I really think might be a little controversial, you know? And so, so it's stupid because I can't really talk about it much, but I could say that, I can put it to you this way. And I've been actually considering writing a book about this because, it's all kind of come down to three things for me. Like this whole experience, life, and everything that fits into it, and our existence here, you could fit into three boxes, and that is values, processes, and resources, right? So every action that you take, right, you run through kind of a value system, your principles, whatever, right? And those are the resources, you know, that you get from those actions. But you could flip it around and say, okay, well, I'm going to use these resources, right, based on my values, you know, and send them through a process. But anyway, so it can be spun a lot of different ways. But everything that you can think of, from ideas to physical things to, you know, action, reaction, they can all be fit in those three. And that's my belief system, man, is that, because, you know, the only other thing that I can say for surety is that I'm alive right now. I'm aware, you know, and you're alive right now, and we're all alive right now. And that's really the number one thing that we should be concerning ourselves with, is how can we live right now in a peaceful way together? We're cohabiting this planet. You know, we have a very short time here. We may as well get along. We may as well be happy. Abundance is all around us, you know? And so that's kind of my view on things. I could break it down in a kind of a new age way for you, though, like a spiritual way if you want.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds very Eckhart Tolle from the way.
Yeah, it is. You know, from a a lot of this is kind of it's learned when you start looking into Eastern philosophy a lot, especially like transcendental meditation, but also in a physical sense, in a science perspective, it coincides and goes hand in hand with, you know, on an intellectual level, from like a quantum physics perspective or science, right? Kind of what we were talking about before, how everything, as deep as we can go, you know, it doesn't matter how many magnifying glasses we get, that atom just keeps splitting and chasing. I mean, as we chase it, it runs away from us. Okay. And so that infinite just going on is what is called the unified field. And through transcendental meditation, basically, you are able to tap into that unified field. You're able to transcend thought. You're able to transcend what we call the ego. You're able to tap into pure consciousness, is what they call it, right? And so if you look at it like that, then you say, okay, well, in order for there to even be this VPR kind of thing, value, process, resource, there has to be an observer. It's kind of like if a tree falls in the middle of the forest and there's not an ear to hear, it doesn't make a sound. Mm-hmm. So there's got to be an observer of this experience in order for that to even exist, right?
Right. And
so that observer is the observer of thought. You could say that observer is your natural self. It's pure consciousness. It's as far back to the unified field, whatever you want to call that. You could call it your spirit, right? That's your natural self. It's who you are within the first 60 seconds of being alive. Your mind is not quite structured, right? You're just pure consciousness. It's beautiful. You're in, okay. From there, though, with time, you start creating your mind. This is your brain, okay? So you start being aware of your brain, right? And you have this mind. And then from there, you have motives, and those are generated from what is called the ego. And that's when we edge that out. I don't know if you're much into Wayne Dyer, Dr. Wayne Dyer. Have you heard of Wayne Dyer?
Not yet.
Well, Wayne Dyer, he's an author. He was like a motivational speaker. and everything, but kind of had an awakening, like a spiritual awakening, you know? And so everything started kind of, you know, all the principles started kind of being around this transcendent idea. But he says ego is edge God out, or, you know, edge the natural self out. When we do that, we buy into this brain, we buy into this mind, and we think we are that. And it's easy to, because everyone else is doing the same thing, you know? And so we all think that we're important. We're the stars of our story. Everyone else is an extra in our movie. We're the hero, right? We're the most important thing. And that's where motives come into play. Your rights, you know, as this ego. And so you have motive. And then that motive turns into decisions. This happens every single second, right? Happens every single second. We can, like, within a second, we're making these full circle. We're running through the VPR like system, right? Mm-hmm. And but before we make the decision, we run it through our value system first. The unfortunate thing is most people don't, or are not able to tap into that natural self to see what their real values are as a natural person, as pure consciousness. And so what they go back to is what their brain, where their conditioned brain is, and their conditioned values are, and they make decisions. That's the real value to something like meditation. Anything that allows you to be able to kind of get past the brain and tap into that natural self. So anyway, you make a decision, then you have intention to do it. You start studying it out or whatever. Some things you study out for a long time. Some things happen in a split second. And then you make the action. The process happens, right? The action happens. There's reaction. That could be in the form of a consequence, physically, or instant karma. You could say there's karma. And the reason I say there's karma is because, yeah, let's say you do something wrong. I mean, you could run something positive through the same system and say, okay, if you do something great, there's a great consequence, right? But let's say you commit a crime, then the consequence could be being thrown in jail, okay? Or, you know, suffering in some way, shape, or form. But another way of, the reason I say karma is that sometimes it's not a physical consequence, but it's a mental consequence, meaning your guilt, you know, or whatever conflict now you have in your life based on what you did is your own prison. It's a conflict that you have to deal with. So from there, we learn, we progress, and that's when we go back and do the cycle all over again. And when we do the cycle and we start aligning our values with our processes, that's when we become wise. That's what I would call wisdom. But I would take it a step further and say that, and again, this is just an idea, right? Just an idea for people to think about. It's not so much an intellectual idea, but kind of a new age idea, is that if we are able to transcend thought and we are able to tap into this pure consciousness, then what is to say that we can't get really good at that and live in a meditative state? You know, there are people that do that. You know, they call them yogis and mystics, you know, that apparently they live just blissed out all the time. They live in just pure bliss, you know, and because they have tapped so much into that pure consciousness that they live in that state, and they have their processes and their natural self values so much in alignment that they shrink the amount of time that it takes to learn things, to acquire things, right? The thing is we have goals in life of things that we want to do, but our processes are a lot of the time out of whack with what our real values are, you know? And so anyway, I think that you can transcend that, and you don't have to wait to die to figure out who you really are and to live in that blissful state. And the only reason I say that is because it coincides so much with science, everything we know about quantum physics. And after having practiced it, I mean, it starts kind of just making sense. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at. I love Taoism. I'm so intrigued by Taoism. Mm-hmm. if any of you listening right now have never read the Tao Te Ching, I would highly recommend it. It's an amazing book, and it's not written like a historical record like the Bible, and it's very short. I think you can just type it in, Tao Te Ching, read the PDF. You could probably read the entire thing in maybe 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours. It's pretty short.
It's really short. But
it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And a lot of people that face addiction, or they're, trying to get forgiving the past, just trying to get through certain hardships in their life, the Tao Te Ching has absolutely changed their life. And so I say that they're intriguing, but again, it's not, I don't hang my hat on any belief in particular, I think an atheist believes in something just as much as a theist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I believe that there is no God as a belief, right? So.
Right. I think we've gone through similar stints. I went through a stint of like atheism for a while, and I tortured myself going to tons of different churches trying to see if there was any other kind of truth or something that I missed. And my next step has been meditation. I have a good friend of mine. He did a 1 week meditation camp where they really taught him to get into his consciousness, because he was just very stressed out and he wanted to get rid of all that stress. And now he is like the chillest dude.
Yeah.
Someone could be screaming him up and down, and he doesn't have everything figured out in life, but he has a way to deal with that.
Well, yeah, when you tap into the infinite, then you tap into infinite energy, infinite creativity. I mean, you know what I mean? Just infinite bliss. And so it helps with stress big time. Absolutely. Just transcending that. But TM is a very specific thing, they call it TM, transcendental meditation, because you're given a mantra, and it's a certain sound that allows you to dive deep. The other two forms of meditation would be awareness and focus meditation. Focus is where you just focus on one thing. Maybe you're focused on your breath, right? Mm-hmm. Awareness is you're aware of all your thoughts. You try to be the observer of all your thoughts. You can learn a lot about yourself that way. But transcending is transcending both of those. You transcend all focus. You transcend all thought, and that's when you really tap in. And so it's really interesting, all of that. I would say that's what intrigues me the most. Again, I try not to cling to certain things. To give you an idea, I know that it sounds like I'm a very spiritual, this whole we are part of the sea of consciousness and all that. But if I had to hang my hat on anything and I put all my money on one thing, it would be the fact that we're a simulation. We're a simulation, probably inside of a simulation, inside of a simulation. Think of it kind of like the Matrix. And I know that sounds crazy, but tune into my channel because we'll talk all about it. And maybe by the time after I have 10 minutes with you, maybe you'll change your mind that it's not so crazy.
Well, considering where I'm at and what we've been through, we're pretty open-minded to learning all sides of the fence of a whole bunch of different stuff, because it's who am I to say what's right and wrong now? And might as well explore all of this and find what works for me. I think everyone should be like that. I get a ton of comments and emails from people asking me, what should I believe? What's the right religion? And I keep telling them over and over individually, it's almost overwhelming sometimes. Is that in as nice a way as possible, I try to acknowledge the line and ensure their feelings in the process that, I've been there, I know how that feels, but I can guarantee there's options out there. It should never be dependent on one train of thought or one religion.
Yeah, and it goes back to what I was saying about the VPR, right? That we have values, we have processes, and we have resources, but we are our own people. And to allow an organization to decide your values for you, that's kind of scary.
Extremely scary.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely scary. It's why cults are so popular now.
Yeah.
People are being put under undue influence and deceptively recruited.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It is sad. But anyway, so that's it. I hope that wasn't too crazy, but I mean, we live in such a complicated universe, man. I mean, like I said, it's like we should be exploring the craziest of ideas. We should allow our intellect to go different places, and we should be open-minded and sharing and communicative, man. I mean, that's what it's all about. And if we find something, that helps us all understand each other and live in a peaceful way, then we should let go of maybe what we've clinged to before and progress. And, you know, so anyway, that's my take on it, you know.
But I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that a lot of viewers, because I do get open-minded viewers, and there's groups that I'm a part of that are on that level and train of thought. It's good for us to consider those, and maybe some of the stuff people may not be aware of, which is huge.
Consider everything.
Yeah.
Enter in assuming nothing. That's the best place I think that a human can be. You know?
I agree.
Yeah.
Now, there's possibly, I mean, I know a good amount of Mormons. If there's anyone watching right now who's allowed themselves the permission mentally to watch this, congratulations, you're on your way.
Right.
That's huge.
Very exciting. Yeah.
Huge, yeah. Your whole new life is going to be amazing on this new journey.
Yes.
What would you, Trevor, what would you have to say to them if they made it this far?
I would echo what you said. First of all, congratulations to getting to this point. It's very true what I said. There's no monetary amount that I would accept to, you know, not go through that. It's hard, but what you get as a result is just so beautiful. And it's exciting. Every day is like a new, you know, it's a new journey. And there are beautiful people in this world that think like you know? And it's all about just kind of putting your feelers out there, opening yourself up, start communicating. Don't be afraid to talk about the scary things. Dare to think different, you know, and dare to communicate these ideas. But as you do that, you'll be a magnet. You'll be a magnet to people that are like that. There's a lot of support out there for anybody, even if you're in the thickest of thick Mormonism here in Utah. There are support groups and so much is ahead, right? I mean, so much is ahead. Yeah. So I would just say I'm excited for you. Open your mind to so many different things. Don't assume anything. Just as much as you're learning right now that you assumed a lot, don't real quickly, because it's easy to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, or, you know, commit the same mistake twice in clinging to another idea, you know, another belief. I would say just keep an open mind, man. If we were wrong about this and we were so sure about it, right, then we know a lot less than we thought.
I 100% agree. Yeah, because I was also very so sure about my convictions, and then, you know, now it's extremely humbling to realize, you know,
it is, and it's a good
life is based off of a lie.
It's a good place to be at. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great because you can only look up, and there's so much.
Well, and that's what Jesus taught, you know, is to be like a child. And what's a child? I mean, that is the most innocent, most questioning state that you could be in is as a child, you know, not assuming anything. I mean, I have a 3-year-old son, and the questions he asked me, I was like, man, I wish I could ask those questions again. But over years and years and years, we have this filter in front of us that tells us, oh, you know, I've seen this plant, you know, 1,000,000 times, or I've seen grass. And so you start to not even see those things anymore, you know? And so when you go back and trace it back and you start to become like a child again, and you start looking at things and start asking questions and saying like, well, what is this really, you know? And you start seeing the beauty in it again. And man, like, nothing better than that, you know? So yeah,
it's really awesome.
And when you get to that point, because when you see that everything is kind of connected, as they say in Hinduism, there's the Atman and the Brahman. Yeah. So our consciousness of who we are in this experience would be considered the Atman. But really, at the end of the day, we're all tied. It's like sap in a tree, right? We're all different leaves, but we're part of the tree, and it's the sap, you know, that makes us, you know. And to say that you don't have the same sap in you that I have in me, it's the same divinity. You know, people don't like to say that. Atheists and scientists don't like to hear that word divinity, but call it what you will. But whatever that consciousness is that separates us from monkeys, because you know, physiologically, we're less than a percentage, like 1% different than monkeys, you know? And so what is that, you know? That's what unites us. And when you start seeing that, then it's like what Christ was teaching, you know, like do unto others as you would do unto yourself, because we are all one, you know, at the end of the day, you know? And so anyway, man.
No, that's huge. Yeah, mind exploding.
Yeah, kind of a deep thought, but that's kind of like back to the gods that have gods that have gods that have gods.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. If that's the case, then that means very much we are all connected. So anyway, man.
Beautiful thought. Beautiful way to look at it. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and your day for hanging out with me and the audience that's going to get to see this. It's going to be really, really exciting to get a lot of feedback on what's going on in the Mormon world and the JW world, and why we need to be communicating and be together.
Right.
We're all in this together, the struggle.
Absolutely.
Like I said.
There's a lot we can learn from each other, different experiences.
Huge. And just by us doing this, we never know who's going to watch it. Any final things that you wanted to say to anyone?
I think that'll pretty much do it, man.
Yeah.
Just peace. Yeah.
Peace and love, y'all.
Love is all you need, right?
Yeah.
It's cliche, but it's true. Love is all you need.
It is.
We'll end with that.
All right.